I always say to people, if you build it, they will not come. That's a fallacy, right? Like great products don't sell themselves. Great products are an enabler to successful selling, but they don't sell themselves. So I think that's a pocket I've gotten into, especially with entrepreneurs, is to get them to realize as great as their idea or their service or their product is, they still need a strategy. They still need a go-to-market plan. They need outbound selling. Like they need things to actually ring the cash register.
This is the Entrepreneurs United podcast with your hosts, John St. Pierre and Rich Hoffman.
He's the co-founder of the Executive Crash Course, also the founder of Fifth Element Associates. Joe, I need to know, what is the fifth element?
Yeah, what is the fifth element? The company was actually started to get people to ask that question, right? The idea is that we provide that extra piece that you need to grow your business. You have a lot of pieces in place, but you need a little bit of help. And so the fifth element is that missing piece, right? The idea of earth, wind, fire, water. And then that fifth element was supposed to be the one that pulled it all together and gave you that superpower. So that's it.
And what are some of the components of that fifth element, Joe?
The focus is on growth. That's really what we do. And so a lot of that is working with sales teams and executives, setting strategy, vision, mission, strategy. How do I go to market? How do I differentiate? So a lot of it is that piece, but it's also very practical. It's training, coaching. We do a lot of work with small, medium, and large organizations. And so there has to be some adaptability to what their needs are. But it's really everything that goes along with really building a sales and marketing program.
So when you think about the customers or clients who you have coached, John and I are coaches also, and I know sometimes there's just a pocket that you get into that you know is really valuable for a lot of people, and it comes up often, and sometimes they come in waves. What's a recent pocket you've gotten into with some of your clients that you just know if you end up going there, you know what you're going to say, and it's going to be high value? What is one of those pockets you've been on lately?
That's a really great question. So it does depend on the size of the client. And I've been doing a lot of work recently with entrepreneurs. That's definitely a piece of my work. And I know it's totally focused on your show. So let me talk about that piece of it. A lot of times when I work with entrepreneurs, they have a great idea. They've got a great product. They've got something really innovative. They tend to be very high energy, innovative people. But often they haven't really thought through how they're going to sell it. And I always say to people, if you build it, they will not come. That's a fallacy, right? Like great products don't sell themselves. Great products are an enabler to successful selling, but they don't sell themselves. So I think that's a pocket I've gotten into, especially with entrepreneurs, is to get them to realize as great as their idea or their service or their product is, they still need a strategy. They still need a go-to-market plan. They need outbound selling. Like they need things to actually ring the cash register.
So when you say they haven't thought about how to sell it, take me a little deeper in that pocket on what are some of the things you would tell someone on, hey, here's how you sell it. Here's a format that I would typically use and a framework to take people through.
Sure. So the first thing is I want to qualify that and say that the bulk of my work is with B2B selling. Okay, so it's business to business. So for example, if you've got a consumer product, let's take this really cool coffee thermos mug, whatever. That's going to be sold like through Amazon or through retail channels, B2C. And I'm not going to be as helpful to you there. Just to put some guardrails on where my advice can be helpful, it's really more that business to business space. And so in that space, it's what I would do is I would say, let's look at what you have. Who is your target? Why would they buy from you? That's one of my favorite questions is why should they or why would they buy from you? And I listen very carefully to that answer. And a lot of times the answer comes back about all the product features. And I'm like, wait a minute, time out. Your competitors have those product features as well. So why should they buy from you has to go beyond the product. What are you bringing in addition to it? And that's where I like to have, where I want to start. And I could give you a list of a whole bunch of things that they might need to have. But I think the first thing to do is to really start looking at what's my market and how do I succeed in that market? What do I bring to the table? That's the first place.
So when you talk about earlier a go-to-market plan, I think that's just a general title, I believe, for the questions you're asking. Do I have that correct? For example, your go-to-market plan. Before I can put your go-to-market plan together, I need to know what's your target and why would people buy your product. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So all those initial questions are really to understand more about them and their business and develop an overarching strategy that we would then use to build the go-to-market. Because the go-to-market does have a lot of details. If you don't have a strategy, then those details don't really come together in a nice tight package. So as I said, the first thing that I want to understand is why should someone buy from you? And if you don't have that answer, we'll figure it out together. That's okay. There's a reason. There's always a reason. We just have to be really clear on what it is and then put all of our energy into that. And
Okay.
so I'll give you an example. I'll talk about something we can all relate to. Starbucks, right? Great company. Some people love the coffee, some people hate the coffee, but everybody knows it, okay? They're the largest coffee seller in the world, at least today. And if you really look at why people go there, it isn't because they can't get a good cup of coffee somewhere else. They can, and they know that. They go there for a variety of little things that add up to a great personal experience, right? It's consistent, it's high quality, the service is good. The person, taking your order will customize it to a great length for you. They put your name on it. You can order it in advance. There's a drive-up window. They play cool music. The washrooms are clean, right? It's this whole experience that they create that goes beyond the coffee. And so the Starbucks experience is a personal pampering. That's the reason why you go, is it's a little treat for yourself. It's a little bit better. It's not like you can't get good coffee somewhere else, but they have figured out what their value proposition is. And then they gear the whole business to achieving that. And that's what we want to do for our clients. And I say to all the entrepreneurs, we've got to figure that out. What is it that makes you special? Okay. And your product's part of it, but don't hang your head on your product alone. Let's figure out the totality of what makes you special and then build a plan around executing that.
So, Joe, I want to give maybe a live case example. I own a pretty sizable construction company, and I feel like I would struggle answering some of your questions.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put myself on the hot seat, right?
Okay.
How do we grow? We grew by doing good work for our clients and invoicing correctly and getting paid, and therefore our business has grown. But I feel like we're lacking that strategy for the next phase of our growth so that we can properly answer the question why people really buy for us. Or maybe we need to change things operationally so that we do accomplish some differentiators in our space, as an example. So there's a big difference between a company starting up who's
Yeah.
okay, I have this microphone. How do I sell this microphone? Okay, we got to figure out who's our buyer persona and who's our this, who's our that.
Yeah.
And then there's companies that maybe are a little further advanced that have significant revenues, but still are lacking that go to market identity for future growth.
Yep. Yep.
What would you walk them through? I'm not asking what the questions would be, but if I was to call you and say, Joe, help us figure this out. We want to take our company and grow 20, 30% in the next couple of years.
Okay.
We have an existing product, existing service, existing operations. We are who we are right now. We may not have great music when you walk in, and we may not give you that Starbucks experience, but now what do we do? Is it a combination between not only figuring out who you are, but also who you want to be and what you change operationally? Like, how would you navigate that circumstance?
Yeah. So, in my experience, each company has a persona, and we want to understand what that is. And so, as the company grows, now we start to think about culture, right? Because let's say the entrepreneur, the owner operator has a small team, as you said, but now they're getting to that level where they're hiring more people, they've got more operational complexities. Are we losing that personal touch? What you described was a lot about trust. One of the reasons why you should hire me is not only do I do great work, but you can trust me. All right. And that's really important with contractors. Okay. Because customers hear all these stories about a contractor that isn't trustworthy, that makes promises but doesn't deliver. So if your value proposition is a lot about that relationship, the trust, taking care of the customer from A to Z, right? If that's who you are, now we've got to make sure operationally that continues to be the experience that your customers get, even when they're not dealing with the owner. Okay. We have to look at what is the culture of the organization? What are the competencies? How do we hire? How do we train? We've gone from a water cooler environment back in the day when we were all in the office all the time, where you could just socialize and people would pick up on the culture, to now maybe there has to be a little more structured. Maybe there has to be some training. We have to be more clear about articulating what our value is internally as well as externally. What's our vision? So I think that that transition is often really hard for entrepreneurs. They come out of the starting blocks quite successfully, but they get to a point where they struggle in scaling. And it's because their hands-on approach doesn't scale. So they have to move it into really building culture and becoming leaders versus entrepreneurs, right? Because the leader is going to propagate that culture and is going to create that vision both internally and externally. So I think that's the next step of it.
Yeah, that's very well said. I can relate to every contractor will tell you that they provide great quality, they show up on time, they deliver what they promise. That's their selling proposition. But what
Yep.
you sell and what you do are two different things.
You got to walk the talk.
And yeah, and as you grow and scale, it gets harder and harder and harder. And there's that whole growth paradox issue, right? Where you grow, therefore you need more people, therefore you need to train them. And the next thing you know, so stuff is breaking along the way. When you
Right.
work with companies, how do you assist them in that vein? So I understand the go-to-market side. We talked about
Yep.
kind of growth. How do you help companies navigate the growing pains of cultural growth and people growth and all that side that comes with success, quite frankly, but then it can also be a big failure point too?
There's a few things. First off, you can't be all things to all people. And one of the ways that you can be more successful when you scale is to align yourself with customers that are a good fit. And that sounds trite, but it really isn't. So I want to make sure that whoever I'm working with, we're gonna work well together. And if you have a big enough pipeline, you can be selective with the work you take. And if you don't have a big enough pipeline, you're going to take whatever work comes along. And a lot of that work is not going to be a good fit. And now you're going to have trouble delivering on the promise. Let's just take an example where you've got someone who's like super particular. And you're thinking to yourself, I may not be able to make this person happy. I'm not sure anybody can make this person happy. Wouldn't it be great if you had another customer that wanted to work with you that was a good fit, and then you didn't have to take this risky account? Okay. So part of it is we've got to build a pipeline so that we can pick good fits, so we can be well aligned with our customers, good communication, same vision, values, that sort of thing. Okay. And part of it is now internally, we've got to put pieces in place to create the values and show and teach people how they show up making hard decisions. Businesses all want to be things, but at the end of the day, they may not choose to be them because it's hard. So let's take an example where we say the customer's always right. This is just hypothetical. Customer's always right. That's what we believe. Do you really believe that? Because if a customer calls up and says, I'm really dissatisfied and I don't want to pay you, are you going to say, okay, customer's always right? So we've got to figure out what is it we want our people to understand and be, and then we demonstrate that by making the hard decisions, by walking the talk. And then the last thing to your question, I'm trying not to go too long here, but all businesses are like an airplane that's being built as it rolls down the runway. Okay, we have to keep moving, and at the same time we're in a continuous state of change. And so I think that understanding that and setting the operation up to recognize that we've never arrived and we don't plan on ever arriving. We're in a continuous state of improvement. And so that means collaboration, feedback, surveying customers, experimenting, figuring out what works, being willing to fail and then learn from that and make changes. Those are all investments in the company. It's going to eat a little bit into your profit, but in the end, you're going to scale and grow and be more successful. So the entrepreneur has to be willing to take some risk.
So I hear you on align with customers who are a good fit. I get it. I actually love the philosophy. When I ground that into the reality of most entrepreneurs' businesses, when a customer says, oh, can you just add this on? And it's not in the core service. And you absolutely could add that on.
Right.
And it's not that much effort. And they are willing to pay for it. And it would make a happy customer. How tight are we on They have to be a good fit, and we're going to define a good fit, and either you're in it or you're not.
I think that comes back to the strategy. And are you committed to it? And like you guys noticed, one of the things I said early on, I said, look, my expertise is B2B. So I put a guardrail up there so that I could tell you where I do well and also avoid going where I could do it, but I'm not great at it. And what I would say is the most successful entrepreneurs that I've worked with have had the courage to stay the course, okay? To really build that quality, build that expertise, build that customer base in their core competency. Now, if a customer is asking me to do something new, but I think it's strategic and it's where I want to go, then that's an investment. It's not a risk, it's an investment. But if I'm simply taking that business because cash flow is bad, it's risky. Okay. It's a distraction from growing my team in the right direction. It might not go well because it's not my core competency. I'm sending a mixed message to the market. And more importantly, I'm sending a mixed message to my internal folks on who we are, what we believe in, and where we're going. So that really should be at least given a lot of consideration before doing it. I always say it's not a question of can I do it, it's a question of should I do it? Because we can do a lot of things, but maybe we shouldn't do all of those things because it's not long-term good for the business. Those are the hard decisions. And as a coach, I challenge my leaders about that. I can't tell them what to do, but I will definitely ask and talk about what are the consequences so that they can think it all the way through and then decide proactively what they feel is best.
I want to marry two concepts that you mentioned over the course of the conversation. One is building culture with your team. And then the other is this idea that the customer's not always right. In your work of developing culture with team, if the customer's not always right, who is?
That's case by case. No one can always be right. So, by definition, the customer can't always be right. But I think the concept behind that phrase is we want to be customer centric, right? We want to really help our customer achieve what matters to them. That's our goal. And good customer service and isn't saying yes to everything. It's actually saying no sometimes and the customer's still happy. And so I think that when you're really working in a collaborative way with your customers, it's not about who's right or who's wrong. It's about how do we achieve the goal in a way that works for all parties. So I want to shift that paradigm from someone's right and someone's wrong to how do we work together to achieve what you need and want and what I need and want. And if we can be more collaborative and more transparent, we can problem solve a lot better. And yeah, sometimes that means we might have to do something at no charge to satisfy the customer. Of course, that's part of figuring that out. But it also means that the customer, in some cases, is going to have to make some compromises or agree to some things that are different than what they want. And if there's a good relationship and there's a foundation of trust, we can have those conversations and work it out. And this is life. Everybody knows that it isn't perfect. Their personal life isn't perfect. This construction project isn't going to be perfect. But if I have someone that I feel comfortable with, we can get through those issues together. That's what you really want.
Joe, you wrote a book called Leadership Selling.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the book and why somebody should pick that up?
Yeah. So first off, the book is written for owners, entrepreneurs, sales leaders, CEOs. It's not really written as a how-to book for salespeople, although there's information in there that they would benefit from. It's a strategic book geared towards the people at the top of the house that are trying to figure out how to grow their business. Okay. So who should buy it? Really anybody who's trying to figure out how to grow their business. They're not happy with the results they're getting, or maybe they're moving into the next stage, right? They might be doing really well, but now they're ready for that next wave of growth. And so it's really focused on how do you grow your business from a sales perspective, not from a social media perspective or from a marketing perspective. It's really about how do you grow B2B sales. And that's the foundation of it. And it's a quick read. It's probably about 3 hours. I tried to write it in a way that an executive wouldn't lose attention span. It would give them lots of information, but not so detailed that they would time out on it.
Well, that's always a good idea for us executives. But so I'd love to ask this question since a lot of your focus work is on sales and marketing and growth. I understand some of the things we talked about, like the go-to-market plan and aligning with your customers and having the right customers and a bunch of different things. Talk to me about sales management side of things. What are some of the failure points or success points in B2B sales where you need to have this, or these are things I've seen that don't work as it relates to sales management of a team that you're leading?
Yeah, so one of the big challenges with sales managers is they don't spend enough time in the field. You need to be in the field with your salespeople, seeing what they're doing, helping them close deals, and also identifying where the gaps are so that you could do training, coaching, whatever to get improvement. They spend a lot of time doing things that honestly don't relate to the core aspect of selling. You got to spend time with your customer to be relevant and to help your team. So that's the first thing is I always encourage them to coach more, and I'll map out. So let's map out your day, your week, your month, and how much time do you spend doing paperwork and looking at reports and that sort of thing versus how much time do you actually spend coaching? Because coaching actually is the highest value thing you can probably do. I can get someone else to run a report and tell me what it says. But you're the sales manager, you've got sales expertise, you're responsible for a team. How are you helping them on a daily basis be more successful? So that's a big one. I try and get people to coach using competencies because skill's important, but it doesn't change behavior. Okay. So a classic example is I know how to prospect, but I don't like it. So I don't do it. I try and avoid it. Giving me another skill training on prospecting doesn't change my behavior, right? But competencies, identifying competencies where I could grow or improve, improving my business acumen, improving my communication skills, improving my negotiation, right? Those sorts of things, my time management, those things are more coachable and will start to shift behaviors. So that's another thing that I look for sales managers is how can I give them some tools that will allow them to be more effective in their role of coaching, also in the role of hiring. Do we even know who we're looking for?
Yeah.
What does good look like? Because if you don't hire the right people, it's an uphill battle. So those are things that I try and do with sales managers is help them hire, identify competencies and profiles, coach to them, and get out in the field. Get away from your computer screen and stop talking about your company and your product. Solve your customers' problems. Understand your customer and watch how your business improves.
That's great. So I'm assuming a lot of that is covered in the book
It
Leadership
is.
Selling. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
That's
Surprisingly.
fantastic. I mean, the one part that you hit on, and I know Rich, you're strong on as well, is this idea of being a manager and being in your ivory tower corner office and looking at the numbers and going, you didn't do enough calls this week, or you didn't sell
Right.
enough stuff. And the difference between somebody who's coaching and actively coaching their team, literally getting out there in the field and witnessing them in a sale and giving them feedback, or say, hey, watch me, I'm going to do the next one, watch how this works, and then you'll watch you again. And that whole coaching element is almost like a lost art right now, where we just expect salespeople to just, when you hire them, they're going to go out and start selling and they're going to do good
Right.
for you. And it's like sink or swim kind of situation that we're facing that we have to be really careful with. I know, Rich, you're big on that in terms of the coaching side of things in sales or otherwise. That's a lost art.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Joe, when you talk about coaching the competencies, do you recommend coaching like a competency model where there's an objective evaluation of what excellence is or what hitting the standards are in that competency?
There's a lot of good tools out there, and I often recommend let's baseline the team. Okay, it depends on how big they are and where they're at, how much hiring they're doing. But often I think baselining the team is really helpful. As an individual, if you baseline me and say, okay, here's where you're at, here's some things to work on, I'm like, great, you're going to help me improve. I want to be better at whatever it is, whatever this competence is that you've identified that, I could be stronger at. And that actually is personal development. You're helping me develop myself. So when introduced properly, salespeople tend to really embrace it and not feel like, oh, this is an assessment to fire me or whatever. We don't want it to be negative. We want them to really know we're investing in them. So if you can baseline your team, there's a few advantages. One, it's more objective. Two, you'll identify common gaps, and then you can do formal training. So let's say, for example, we identify our whole team was soft in storytelling. And that's a key element that we want our people to be good at. Okay, we'll do some storytelling training for the whole team. But then you may also say, hey, Joe's not strong enough in business acumen. I'm going to work one-on-one with him there. So I think it does give you that ability when you do an assessment and a baseline to identify individual as well as global areas to focus on. And it certainly helps with hiring because now when you're hiring, you know what you're looking for. And that gives you more consistency.
When you say you major in the B2B side, what is it that you do on the B2B side that, let's say, you may not do or doesn't work on the B2C side?
B2B side is first off outbound selling. We're proactively reaching out to companies and we're engaging with them. And usually there's multiple decision makers, there's an organizational chart. So we're trying to figure out who's the right decision maker or decision makers plural. And so I think that there tends to be more account planning and call planning. The opportunities might be a little more complex or a lot more complex. Often a sales cycle is a month long or 6 months long, right? Based on how big it is. I've got clients that have 18-month sales cycles because they're selling very large, complex products and services. So I think that the whole selling approach is a lot less transactional. It's not how many widgets and how soon can you ship them to me and what's the cost. It's really repeat business often and cultivating relationships and really understanding the customer's world so you can position yourself as a trusted advisor or someone who can help them achieve their goals.
What's one thing every entrepreneur should do today before they go to bed? Today, go out and do this, and it's going to start to move the needle.
Go talk to your customers and ask why they bought from you. Do it today. Do it every day. And ask the people that didn't buy from you why. See what you can learn. Listen to your customers, right? If you really want to be successful, I think the best advice I can give you is be a leader, sell to leaders. Go talk to your customer and understand what's going on in their business.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us today, Joe.
Oh, it's great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the questions and conversation. It was
Joe, if
wonderful.
people want to learn more, where can they find you?
The best place is to go to leadership-selling.com. And that talks about my book and gives you a link to me. And people can call me, email me, and I'm available to have conversations without expecting people to do business with me.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe.
Cheers.
Stay tuned as John and Rich unpack today's conversation.
John, this whole idea around why should they buy from you? And not just then rattling off a standard list of features that everybody does, but really understanding what are you bringing in addition to those features. I think that's really key. And I think there's an opportunity in this. I recently heard somebody say, you should really be all the calls that you can. You should really be recording them or transcribing them into text. When you do that, you can then upload that into ChatGPT and you can ask ChatGPT, what are the frameworks that I use when I'm selling? What are the things that I do that are unique versus others in my industry? What are my opportunities to improve on my sales call? I think there's a huge opportunity to lean into technology, and it doesn't even take more time. It would take you under 10 minutes to set up something like Fireflies. That is the example of one that I use on my coaching calls. Take under 10 minutes to set it up. Forevermore, every Zoom call or conversation ends up getting recorded automatically, goes into a file folder. Whenever you want, you can take that out, drop it into ChatGPT, and it'll tell you what you did well, what you could do better, and anything you want to ask it.
That's amazing. Like, I'm not surprised by what you just said. I just never thought about that specific application from a sales standpoint. I feel like every day I'm learning one or two new things I could be using ChatGPT for. You just gave a really good one. And even to the point of why is your customer buying from you? It's a great question that I think a lot of entrepreneurs, leaders, and salespeople break it down to basics. They bought from me because they like me. They bought from me because our price was right. They bought me because the last time they bought from us, it worked well. But there's always deeper reasons as to, well, why didn't they buy it from XYZ company? Why are they buying it from you? And to your point, asking the leader of a company to go talk to your customers and ask them these questions sounds pretty simple. Joe mentioned, like, go do this. But yet we don't. I don't understand it because I agree with Joe. It's the most important thing we should be doing. The leader and owner, entrepreneur of a company should go call their top customers and have conversations with them and ask them these questions and deep dive and figure it out. But yet we don't. Why
The
don't
only
we?
thing that I can pull from that, John, is, and I don't propose I have the answer, but I have thoughts when you pose a question like that, is we look at the Eisenhower matrix and go, urgency and importance. Going and asking a existing customer, so can you tell me more about why you bought from us? And drawing back to that's important, but it's never going to be urgent. That never is going to turn into a dumpster fire that has to be put out immediately. And there are a lot of dumpster fires out there. So without an entrepreneur really prioritizing that, I could see why it wouldn't get done. It doesn't necessarily immediately generate revenue, although you could claim it develops a relationship with the person you're asking, but it doesn't necessarily immediately develop revenue. And there are other opportunities where we could develop revenue and we could spend a half hour working on the leads that we have and following up or deliver. There are 101 things that could be done. And for somebody to prioritize, let's take a half hour and learn a little bit about why somebody buys. I think it's difficult for the average entrepreneur to see that as a highest value use of time.
You nailed it, Rich. Absolutely nailed it. Great response to my question. In the moment of asking it, I was genuinely searching for the answer, and you answered it pretty quickly. And I don't know if a lot of people know about the Eisenhower matrix, and maybe we should actually talk about it in one of our future podcasts, because I think it's very relevant that we are dealing with the urgency of the moment of today. We're dealing with the customer we lost, and how can we operationally fix what just happened, or the employee that just quit, or the employee we need to hire, or this situation or that situation. And we don't take the forethought. And I think what Joe's talking about here too is like, why does your company exist, right? What is your target? Why would they buy from you? All these different questions, you really need to be thoughtful of them. And I think way too often you go from month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year, and you wake up a few years later and you're not actually who you thought you were going to be, because you weren't very intentional and thoughtful, not just on the sales side, but the operational side to deliver the experience as well. Because you aren't necessarily what you sell, you are what you deliver. And that's one part that I think a lot of companies that grow really struggle with, is maintaining that quality as they grow. Think about a franchise. I can remember going to, I'll use restaurants as an example. It's a pretty easy example, right? But I can remember going to a PF Chang's when there was only a couple of PF Chang's, and I was like, wow, this is the best place ever. And now you go to PF Chang's, it feels like a McDonald's with sit down. And so as your business scales, upholding that experience that you initially intended to have is probably the hardest thing an entrepreneur has to do.
I like where Joe left as ask the customer why they bought from you. I like that as an action item. I'd like to propose another action item straight out of Joe's material. Pick a competency, which everybody on the team, or if you have a large sales team, everybody on the sales team, or everybody on the operation, pick a competency that you want them to all be good at. That competency could be anything. It could be building rapport. It could be asking questions. It could be documenting what you're hearing as the answers. It could be anything, but pick one. And then go get a baseline of how is that competency being applied by the people who should be applying it. And you'll find out very quickly, to Joe's point, is there a group training necessary on that competency, or is there one-on-one training necessary for that competency? Or is there not any because everybody's nailing it, which is a possibility, but it's unlikely because you're going to move from one competency to the next, but without overwhelming things about one competency to the next. Just pick one, anyone, go get that baseline and go figure out how to move the needle on that competency that you picked that's so important.
But Rich, why? Why are we not doing it? Why are we not doing enough competency and enough training and enough going out and figuring out what competency our team needs to do? It's almost the exact same question I just asked about asking your customers. It's we're not spending enough time in the right quadrant, if you will, of being able to plan, because we're always in reactive mode. We always have to hit the next goal of the next month and the next situation. So it's easier said than done. How do we do that? And I think that's part of, I think it's absolutely something we need to dive deeper into. I had asked you recently on a podcast, what is the one single thing you think small businesses are lacking? And I had said quarterly offsites, and you had said effective meetings. And I think your response a few minutes ago just trumped both of those. We're not spending enough time in this planning quadrant. We're spending too much time in the urgent and not enough time really thinking through all these different areas of what competencies our team needs and putting the training programs together, or what our customers really think of our product and why they bought from us or didn't. We don't spend enough time there. We're always reacting to the fire drills that are going on in our business. And how do you do that? And that's a skill set in and of itself of time management and prioritization. And there's a lot of things are coming to mind there that you really need to dedicate the time. And that, to me, is also another reason why you would hire a consultant like Joe, right? Or a coach like Joe to bring into your business to help enforce these behaviors, because left on your own doing, you may not do these things. You got too many other fires you got to take care of. Don't you agree?
Yeah, and I think you nailed it on taking the time to think through it, because that's the difficult part, is somebody taking the time to think about, if you're thinking about what competencies the team needs to be displaying, you're not doing anything else during that time. You're doing that one thing and prioritizing that time. To your point on all of the putting out fires, if, again, we should do a podcast just on the Eisenhower matrix, but if we look at that Eisenhower matrix, there are two quadrants that are urgent. One of them is urgent and important. So that's the fire alarm that's going off. You got to react to immediately, or there are consequences to not doing it. The other one is urgent and not important. So you'd ask yourself, why would I ever do anything urgently that's not important? That doesn't make any sense. I call that the quadrant of interruptions. What that is, usually something that is urgent and important to another person is pushing in on your time, and you're having to react immediately, urgently, but it's really not that important to you. And if they would have managed their time better, it wouldn't have become a dumpster fire to begin with. It wouldn't have been urgent and important to begin with. So that speaks to, as an entrepreneur, working with them on their priorities and really thinking through things. So yeah, this all ends up coming back to, with the conversation with Joe, is this competency-based approach. And I love, again, that take on why our customers are buying from us. And I think within that, you could develop a competency. So if our customers are buying from us because of ABC, okay, how often is my sales team talking about ABC? And let's go get that baseline.
Love that. There's a future podcast and conversation for you and I. We know we're going to talk about next, the Eisenhower matrix, and how leaders and managers should effectively manage their time within this matrix. So great setup for our next conversation. Rich, great conversation. Look forward to the next time. Thanks for joining us on the Entrepreneurs United podcast.